This is the More of What Matters podcast, where we have honest conversations for the daring, heart-centered woman, designed to help you navigate a world filled with options and opinions. More of What Matters is something you choose for yourself. Rooted in finding inspiration in your daily life, this is about matching what's most important to you, spread across family, faith, values, leadership, your health, personal development, business, or career. We cover it all here.
And so, yes, you really need to understand the full picture and scope of, who you are and who you want to serve and what you want to do with your life, with your career, with your loved ones, so that you keep the space and time and energy open for when the right things come along.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to today's episode. I sit down with Crystal Ware, and you're going to love her. She is a lawyer, an entrepreneur, and investor. And after spending years in corporate America, she found the courage to leave her lucrative career and invest in herself. Along the way, she's learned so much about getting clear on your purpose, owning your worth, and living life on your own terms. We talk about her work now, the podcast that she has, as well as her passion to help other women get there faster, which I love because she's absolutely not gatekeeping. She's giving you all of the details, and we get into so much in this packed full episode. I can't wait for you to take a listen. Here's my conversation with Crystal Ware. Hello, welcome to the podcast, Crystal. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Andrea. I'm excited to dive in and chat with you today.
I know. So we met each other through a mutual circle, which I think is always one of the best ways to meet people who are like-minded in their passions for kind of going after their goals, which we'll get into today, a little bit about your story. But before we go into the topics that I invited you to chat with us about, will you tell us your background and how you got to what you're doing today and a little bit about you?
Absolutely. So it's kind of a winding path. I call it the non-linear career path. And, I started out in law school knowing that I really wanted to help people, but I didn't really have a set definition of what that meant or what that was going to look like. Some people go into law school thinking that they are going to be a practicing attorney, that they want to be a partner at a big firm. That really wasn't my goal. I went to law school just because I really had a heart for helping people. And so after having a horrible experience at a law firm where it just was not a good cultural fit, I shifted gears. I went into insurance. And I say I use my law degree every single day. After working in corporate for many years, I decided there was more for me to do. And there was more that I wanted to accomplish. So I started my own insurance practice with two business partners. And in doing that, it's been wonderful. It's been so great. I am still running that business. But I also realized that I had a heart and that helping nature that wanted to come through and work with women and let women see that there are so many ways to achieve and have the career and life that you love and dream about. It took me, 10, 12, 15 years to do that. And I want to put all of that energy and effort and knowledge and help other women to get there faster.
I love that. Okay, so tell us about that, because I think when people hear about a law career, they make some assumptions. They make assumptions that, you're making lots of money, like that would be a very big draw to stay there. Like what got so uncomfortable for you that you knew I have to move on?
Well, and I always like to preface, because I know that people that may meet me in real life or learn more about me, I want to be transparent and say I do have, a little bit of a safety net in that I have a spouse that has a great career. And I know that's not always possible for other people. But what really got uncomfortable for me was the constricted nature of working in corporate. I mean, you're expected to be there from 9 to 5 or whatever hours derivative of that time frame that you have to be on for those certain amount of time, no matter where you are or what you're accomplishing or how efficient you are. And it got so suffocating, honestly, that I could not feel comfortable in leaving to do stuff with my kids, without taking vacation time and working remote when I wanted to, having to ask for permission. I just really didn't have the freedom to live the life I wanted, the freedom of time, the freedom to invest in my family, the freedom to invest in other areas of knowledge growth and aspects. I mean, you're really paid to be an expert. And so that's where it got very uncomfortable for me, to where I said, you know what, I can leave this very, very lucrative 6-figure career that I have and start something new from the ground up, because I knew that at the end of the day, what I could build and what I could do and the abilities that I had would lend itself to any and everything I could possibly want to do. And having the freedom to cultivate your time and be creative and do other things, that was just really, really meaningful to me.
I love that. We talk a lot about things being very transferable here. Like, you have this very successful career and you take that with you. You take all of those pieces that help to build that. You might not take the company with you, but you definitely take everything that is yours with you. And I think so many times, especially women, live in fear of that and hope that they may never have to approach that. But there's such freedom and energy that can come from just taking that possible leap. And I know you mentioned your situation, it might not be everybody's situation, but I love that you shared that because I do know a lot of people that face that fear all the time. Okay, so we talked a little bit, and I knew I had to have you on the podcast to talk about a few things because you are so passionate about these areas, and I know they're going to resonate for a lot of people who listen regularly. So let's talk about this idea around saying yes. What does that lead to? I don't want to like steal the tagline, so I want to give you the chance to tell us about what does saying yes lead to? What can it mean? And what are some things you like to coach women on?
Yeah. And it's really powerful for people to understand, in this, the last 10 years, the tagline of YOLO, you only live once, like jump on it, let's do it. That's kind of where the messaging came to me, is thinking through like what people do and even what impacts me on saying yes. Like somebody invites you to a party, somebody invites you out for drinks, somebody invites you on a trip, somebody invites you, to interview for a job. And as a person that wants more and wants growth and wants to achieve and see and do everything, it's so easy to say yes and trying to make time to say yes to everything. But really, the importance there is what you're saying no to. What you're saying no to is equally, if not more important. Steve Jobs said it was more important than what you say yes to. Because when you say yes to something, you're really having to say no to other things. We don't have an infinite supply of time. We don't have an infinite supply of energy, as much as I wish I did. I'm not 21 anymore. That energy is draining. So what we say no to is really, really important. There is an opportunity cost to everything that we're doing, every way that we're spending our time, investing ourselves, investing emotionally. And so we have to really get clear on what we want and what we want to achieve and what we plan to do, so that we can focus and make sure that we're only saying yes to things that align with our goals and saying no to most everything else. Because those opportunity costs can be huge and they can grow the bigger your goals are. And so we really have to stay focused and aligned. That sounds really strict, and it's not intended to be super strict. It's just intended to focus you so that you feel free to say yes when things come up that align with you, and saying no to stuff that isn't, in the same realm or the world that you want to grow into.
I think what's also really hard about that, because I couldn't agree with you more, is that sometimes you have to say no to things before the perfect yes comes around. And so it's really difficult in that season to say no, thinking I've just got to take every opportunity, everything that I possibly can say yes to, I have to. And you're saying that that might not actually be for the best. I mean, depending on what it is you're saying yes to, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that you're that's 100% spot on. When we know where we're going and what we want to do, and sometimes it really takes, you have to sit down, you have to, journal a little bit, write it out, map it out if it's not completely clear in your mind. Because that's the opportunity cost, right? Like if you said yes to something that's a maybe or okay, this kind of fits in with what I'm doing, and then the perfect thing does come along, you may not have the time or the energy or the space to do that without cutting back on other obligations you've brought to yourself. And so, yes, you really need to understand the full picture and scope of who you are and who you want to serve and what you want to do with your life, with your career, with your loved ones, so that you keep the space and time and energy open for when the right things come along.
I think that kind of also connects with, obviously the podcast is called More of What Matters, and it's not about more, it's about more of what matters. And I think
Yes.
there's a huge difference between just saying yes to more, and culturally speaking, I think that's the message we hear most is just more, more, more. And it's status, it's money, it's influence, it's anything you could possibly imagine. The perfect family, the perfect everything. But what it most connects to when you go to sleep at night is, does any of that actually matter to you? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but being connected to that. And that's, I think what you're saying with this is like saying yes can hurt you if you're not
Yeah.
careful.
Yeah.
That's so good,
Yeah.
because
And
I think it takes actually realizing that ahead of time in order to prevent it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talk to my best friend, my oldest friend in the world, who we've known each other since we were 4 and 5 years old, all the time because she is a yes person. And it's not always as a way of people pleasing. It's truly because she wants to have experiences and she wants to do fun things and she wants to get out there and live life. And that's what I have to remind her is that, like, you are wearing yourself down sometimes. I see that you're doing stuff. And then sometimes it comes to the time where you're going out or you're going, on this adventure or doing whatever. And you don't really want to be there anymore because you're either too tired or you don't want to leave your children or whatever the reason may be. That means that it really wasn't a strong yes to begin with. So why are you saying yes? It's okay to say no. Opportunities will still come. I think it's that it all comes back to a scarcity mindset, right? Is it a lot of times people feel like if they don't say yes to things right now, whether it's an invitation or whether it's an opportunity or it's a job interview, that will another one come around. And we shouldn't be worried about that. We should, to your point, exactly, we should be worried about the right things coming around. This same kind of opportunity may not come around because maybe it's not meant for you.
Yeah. It's hard. I think, especially once you become a parent, I think it adds to it a whole nother layer because you're constantly thinking, well, I should say yes to this because of my kids. I should say yes because of, that relationship or those friendships. And that can be, I think, just as tricky. I think for me, it's trickier because I would do more for them and I would scale back on my stuff much easier uh, than the other way around. So,
Yeah, I do. I find that's the case for myself also, that you don't want to take away things from your kids. But sometimes I just have to tell them, we have to have discipline. Discipline equals freedom. When we are disciplined in the things that align in the way we want to work and how we want to live our life, then we're actually more free. And I talk about that in the sense of like, we have to have discipline on what time we go to bed so that we have the energy and the mental strength and fortitude in the morning to get through our day, to get through our sports, to do all the other things that we need and want to do. And so that's where it's saying no to, Netflixing all night so that we can get to bed, so that we have the energy and feel good to do the other things that we want to do that are really meaningful to our lives.
totally. Okay. So when we talked, I knew this is a topic that I needed you to talk about specifically because this isn't something that I spend a ton of time talking about. But when you said it, it really resonated. And that's this whole concept around the taboo topics and conversations that women are basically not having around money. And you specifically called it out when we were talking. I know it's an area of passion for you. You spend a lot of time coaching women on this. Can you just share with us, like, what do you see? What gets in the way? What holds women back? Spill it.
Yeah, I mean, I have reflected on what, my mental mindsets around money are and my mental shifts and how I need to move forward and do stuff differently to accomplish and achieve where I want to go. And, it was very early on that I was taught, we don't talk about money, not because it was evil. I do think that some people that don't have, super working class family, like some point we were maybe barely middle class. Some people that don't have a lot, that mindset comes from jealousy. They feel like money is not meant for them. I didn't have any of those issues, but money was not really talked about. My parents certainly didn't talk about their salaries or anything like that in front of us. And when I got to law school, the interesting thing when you're coming out of law school and you're starting to interview is that all the top law firms post the salaries. So you kind of like know if people are interviewing for certain jobs. Well, that made it much easier to start talking kind of around what salaries, how are you negotiating, where are you going with this? And I just carried that forward and got more comfortable talking about money. But I have found that 100%, I mean, in general, I would say that probably more than 50% of the population feels uncomfortable talking about money, talking about income, talking about salaries. And I find that that number is even higher for women. And I think that it really, 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 really holds us back. If you don't understand what the salary range is or what people in your same genre, same geography are making, how can you know what to ask for yourself? You may feel in your heart that you're worth X and that that's a high number, but what if your neighbor is making Y and that's 50% more? And so I really think that we need to get more comfortable talking around money and the money taboos that go along with that, so that we can really posture ourselves to make the amount that we want to make and that we should be making. And I know that's really difficult and uncomfortable. And sometimes I just ask people, like I was talking to another friend who is going for a position, and she'd kind of talked around what her whole package was. But I knew the type of position that she was interviewing for. And, she wanted to strategize about what she should lay on the table if they ask her as like a starting range. And there's a lot of factors you got to get to that number, to get to the starting point. It's going to be based on your experience. It's going to be based on the position, but you also have to factor in where you're at. In this case, it was going to be kind of a lateral position, but she didn't want to take a big pay cut. Well, how can I help her posture herself and figure out without knowing what her actual salary is, right? And, at first she hesitated, but then she realized she has to share it. She has to get to that point. And I think if we all felt more comfortable talking about that, I think that then we could just better be equipped to go in and talk about salary, talk about pricing your product if you're selling something, talk about your services, whatever it is. But the base of that is that money has been such a taboo, and it's been even more of a taboo for women. And we have to find a way to get around that so we can really help ourselves. And I want women to be successful and wealthy in whatever way that shape that looks like for them.
Well, and it's so interesting because when you're talking, especially in the entrepreneurial sense, I think so many of us look at money as value, right? Like it's the perceived value that someone's willing to pay, but it's also the value you put on what you are offering. Like it goes both ways for sure. I think a lot of people get tripped up on thinking it has to do with worth, where it's like, I'm worth that. Our worth is intrinsic. Like that just exists. We are worthy. We are worth whatever we decide we're worth. So that's not the discussion of money. Like I think you have to understand there's like two separate lanes. Do you agree? Or like, because I think that's what people get all turned up over is just this feeling of, well, I don't know if I don't know if I'm worth that because I actually haven't done it as long as that person or this or that. It starts to get into confidence. It starts to get into self opinion, maybe lacking like lacking some compassion for themselves. Like there's a lot of other things. And that's what I see, especially with entrepreneurs. They get off track because they're thinking too much about worth and not about the value they do bring.
I agree. I mean, when it comes to what you're specifically talking about in entrepreneurship, I think that's absolutely true. Like you have to think, and the best example of that I can think of is when it comes to, people creating some kind of course or a digital product and thinking if it's short, if it's concise, it must not be that valuable. No, it's at the end of the day, what does it do for the other person? What kind of transformation or growth does it create for the other person? It doesn't have to be a complete novel. It doesn't have to be something that's going to take months to download, understand, and take action on. The simplest things are often the most valuable things. So in that way, we need to be able to value what it does for somebody else. That can, you can have a revelation and come to some, excellent knowledge or creation of a product or growth for somebody else. And you literally just moved into the space 6 months ago. That doesn't mean that your product or your value or your service should be, $50. I mean, it's really what value it brings. I think that's what you're getting to. I do, however, think when you're talking about people in the corporate space, your salary is not a reflection of how worthy you are. However, I do believe to some degree, it shows how much your company values you.
Right.
And so I think that can be important to people, and setting the stage for whether you're negotiating a new position, negotiating a new job, or asking for a raise in your existing position, which everybody listening, by the way, you can do that. You have permission. You do not have to accept your salary as is. You can ask for more at any time. But I think that when you set that stage and you know that they pay you what you asked for, you will feel more valued, and then you will do a better job, and then you will get better raises. So it's kind of like a circular pattern. So yes, in some aspects, the money component is not necessarily, well, it doesn't have anything to do with your worth. It has to do with value and what that conveys to other people. And so I think it is important for people to value themselves and to ask for the value that they want, to see, because that conveys other things to you.
You brought up a really good point that I hadn't thought about, which is when you are negotiating for something in a corporate sense, which I 100% agree you need to do, it is very clear how a company feels about that role, or you in that role, or the importance of that role, because it will determine how willing they are to flex on salary. I mean, having been in HR in my background, I can 100% tell you that people could do that. They could absolutely come in and negotiate for what they wanted. Did they get every single line item? Probably not, but they got more often most of what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
If they were seen as high value and the role was super valuable and it was a mission critical job, right? And so that does tell you a lot. And it's important to know that stuff, because if you are coming into an organization like from the outside, you do want to know stepping in, is this a role that they value? Am I going to be set up for success here? Or are they already starting to question that this is important? And if they are, no matter how great you do, it may always come up in conversation or in performance reviews. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah. And it's not that there's not a season where you can just have a normal job and maybe it isn't mission critical and maybe it's not the most valued position to the organization, but it's a good job. It's a good season. The fit of what you'll be doing is where you are at this time in your life. And that's okay. But I think ultimately people want to feel valued and they want that to be conveyed. And if it's not, you should find place that really does value in the way that you want to be valued. Because it does. I mean, we spend a 1/3 of our lives working, right?
Yeah.
Thereabouts. And you want it to feel good and to be happy and excited and passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah, so true. Okay, I love that you brought this up when we were talking about money last time. You talked about how you are the leader of your family's investment strategy, or in your relationship, you're
Mhm.
the leader of your investment strategy. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you divide up roles around money in your household?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's probably maybe not a lot of people have this setup that we have. But my husband had already been in his career. I had been living and working and had just graduated law school myself. And we just decided not to have joint accounts. And it was easier that way. There was no reason for us to have joint accounts. And in fact, we still do, we have one joint account for our mortgage. Um, but so we ended up, I just happened to take on certain bills. He paid other certain bills as our, had kids and other things grew. We just kind of slowly divided up what was going to be done by who and how that was going to be paid. I pretty much always paid for our nanny. He's always paid for our house. I do insurance because that's what I do. He does our kids' sports stuff because he does sports. Um, and it just kind of naturally went that way. But as we grew and as I grew, there was other things that I wanted to do, which started with buying real estate and having rental houses, and then looking at other alternative investments. And, it takes work and effort to look at deals, to, find deals, to get to know people, and kind of get out there in the investing world. And my husband is just very, very focused on his job. And he said, if you want to do that, that's fine. That's great. And you feel strongly about that, then go and do it. And so I said, okay, this is even better. It certainly, we still work through how we communicate on those things, because I'm a big picture person and he is a detail oriented person. So sometimes, when I bring ideas or deals to him, I've got it really succinct, like this is it, point A, point B, C. And I'm asking, of course, as a married couple and with respect, I don't go and make large financial decisions on my own. So I'll talk really high level, but then he sometimes feels like, are you asking me? Do I need to fully understand this? And I'm like, no, I need you to say yes or no. Does it feel right? Does it sound good? Does it pass the sniff test? But it's worked out really well. He's happy to focus on his career and his job and his own business. And I look for deals all the time.
And you love it. I mean, there is a part of this that obviously you love the nurturing of the investment side. I mean, that's what it sounds like. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to like dip their toe into that or move more towards that? Like starting out, what's your best advice?
So I would say it's always easiest to start out with single family houses or something of that nature, just because it's like a known quantity for people. However, I think in the housing market that we're in right now, it's really, really difficult to think about something that would be cash flowing, cash positive. There's two kind of thoughts on investing in real estate for the new investor. It's, you can have equity where you grow the value of the home itself or the property, or cash flow. A lot of people say if it's not going to cash flow right away, what are you doing? And certainly if you're not in the financial position to sink money into something that may not give you a return right away, then you have to have cash flow. But I do think it's kind of hard right now. There are companies that will pull your money together to do investment deals on real estate. But the real trick I see, and this is the difference in what I've learned between the people that are like ultra wealthy and then the what I consider average people with some extra money that they want to deploy in other ways. The difference is really, how do you get in? How do you get in? How do you meet people? How do you hear about deals? And the only way that you can really find out is to network, is to ask and see, do you see somebody else that's doing stuff like this, whether it's on social media and you can cultivate a mentorship, friendship, whatever. Um, and I've done that. I mean, there was somebody I was connected with for a long time on LinkedIn that was over a family office, and they were working on these kind of investment strategies for this extremely rich family. And I just said, hey, can I talk to you about that? How did you get into it? How do you hear about it? How do you find out about deals? And as I've moved on from that, I just try to have a lunch, have a coffee with people, let people know that we are wanting to do more of this. Because I personally feel like I want to know the person on the other end of the deal, the person that's pulling the deal together. And once you're in a different sphere, you're not going to know everybody working on deals. But it's really just networking, and it's still something I'm constantly working on, is building a network of people that I know and they know me, and they know we may be open to opportunities that will share deals when they come available.
I think that's such a good point of like, you might know you want that, but does someone that have influence to actually present something, do they know that that's something you're looking for, looking at? Because I think a lot of times we make assumptions and you can't, because that's not going to get you anywhere. Whether it's assumptions about, well, I'm getting paid fairly, or I'm getting paid what my peers are getting paid, or I just know options will come to me because people know I have the funds for that. No, none of those things exist. You can't assume any of those things. And that's what I'm really taking away from what you're sharing also, is you have to know what's important to you and then present it to the world that way, because that's the only way it's going to actually turn into what you're looking for. Whether it's salary, whether it's how you price your offers or investments. What sort of things do you really know in this moment right now matter most to you? And how does that reflect in your life?
Absolutely. And you're spot on, Andrea. And I love how you sum that up. Communication is so important in everything that we're doing in life. I think that's the biggest mistake that a lot of people make across the board, whether it's in your relationship, assuming, well, don't they know that I want to hear that I'm pretty? Don't they want to know that I want flowers, or whatever it can be? You need to communicate your needs and wants to other people the same way you do with your spouse or significant other, the same way you would with your boss or your HR representative or whoever you're working with in a career, and the same way in your personal life on things that you want to do. It's socializing the ideas. That is a really good way to summarize it. And I'm glad you picked up on that, weaving through all of what we were talking about, because that's it. I mean, we can make a lot of assumptions about everything that we're doing, but we have to be able to clearly communicate what we want, why we want it, and why we should have it or get it, or why we're the right person, whatever that may be. It's communication is so important. And then I would say the next thing is asking the right questions of other people on what they're looking for, to see if there's alignment, asking the right questions to see if you can work backwards into your career, asking the right questions of your spouse or your significant other. And I think communicating and asking questions, a lot can be done when we really work on those aspects.
Well, and it seems like you also then know, like, by the time you get to that stage, you already know what matters most to you, because you have to do that work first.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you can't ask for what you want. You can't go after what you want because you don't know what you want yet. So do you have any advice on helping people narrow down what's most important to them?
Yeah, I always recommend people spend, a few days, a few weeks, a few months, if you need to, thinking about it, like giving yourself 5 minutes a day, a few minutes here, writing it down. What is important to me? What is my vision for my life? I think that is really key. If you can get to having one, maybe two, three maximum sentences summarizing what is the vision for your life, and then how is that going to manifest itself? What does that mean to me? What does that look like? Even doing an exercise where you can write down, what would a perfect day in your life look like? Like, how many hours of work would you be doing? What kind of work would you be doing? Are you going to have a quiet time to have coffee before you jump into work? Are you taking your kids to school? I mean, all that specificity, it doesn't sound, I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but that will inform your decision and getting very specific on what you wanted it to look like. And I have a very specific way. And once I started writing this down, it became even more clear to me. But my vision for my life, and I love to share this with other people, is I want to inspire others to live, love, and grow. That, at the end of the day, is what my vision for my life is. And then how that manifests itself is through my podcast, through working with other women, through working with mentors in my, corporate day life, in working with students to help them understand their career path, and, helping my children and my husband live, love, and grow.
I love that. Okay, so I really love to do this at the end because it gives everyone a chance to kind of get to know you a little bit better. It also just asks some fun things. So we're kind of going to go lightning round on you here.
Okay.
And there's no right or wrong answer. There might be a right or wrong question, but hopefully I don't ask the wrong one. Okay, so what one habit in your day would you say kind of defines how you choose to live? Is there one habit in your day that you could say, yep, this defines how I live?
Can I share two?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
One is always trying to be active. I think that's just so important for overall well-being, health, mental state. So whether it's I just take one little loop, a half-mile loop around my neighborhood, or working out, or playing tennis, whatever it is, playing with my kids outside. Habit, 100%, we stay very active. The second one is gratitude. I try to always say when I go to bed and say my prayers, what I am thankful for. I try to talk about my gratitude with people that I'm grateful for, whether it's just sending somebody a text and saying, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for doing that. Whatever it may be, telling my husband, thank you for being a great dad. Thanks for getting me a coffee, and just practicing gratitude throughout the day, no matter how good or bad the day is.
I love that. Looking back on your career up to this point, is there anything you would have done differently?
No, because I really love where I'm at now. So, I mean, you could always do the shoulda, woulda, couldas. Certainly, there was opportunities that came up along the way that you could, in retrospect, say, should I have done that? Could I have done this? I got into better law schools than I actually ended up going to, like higher ranked law schools. I had an offer before I went to law school for a really big consulting job that would have paid me probably as much as my starting law school out of my starting lawyer salary. But where would that have left me? Right. It would, every little turn can take you to a different path. And so I really just am so thankful for where I am. And I think that all the building blocks, ugly, beautiful, hard, easy, they led me here. And I just really am, so happy, so thankful, love my life, love my career. And that is why I want others to feel the same way, because it is possible.
What's the happiest surprise of your life?
The happiest surprise of my life? Oh my gosh. Well, I have to go with two again. It's always hard for me to narrow it down. Would be how much I have loved how my life has unfolded. I, always was optimistic and always had an idea and goals and dreams in mind. But, being here, even talking about it right now, I just feel like my heart is exploding when I think about it. And that's why gratitude is important. The second one would be how much I love my kids. You can think and you have no idea. You really have no idea how it feels to watch your little people grow into independent people.
Yeah, their own people. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, last question. What is a guilty pleasure of yours?
I would have to say probably the housewives, watching the housewives shows.
Yeah. What do you like about him? I mean, a lot of people say that, so I'm always interested.
So I really started watching it and it came out kind of like when I was graduating for law school. I was reading dense material all the time and I just needed to zone out and have a brain break. But really, as I've gotten older, and I tell my husband, because he also watches The Housewives with me, that I don't like it as much as I did because it's
Mhm.
just now it's so much negativity and I've kind of built my life to kind of insulate from that and I just want to be
Yeah.
surrounded by positivity. All the inputs that we put in, music, TV, who we're around, all of that makes such a big difference in our lives. So I still do like to watch it sometimes, but it's gotten a little negative.
I agree. I mean, I never was super into it, but when I would watch it, it would always be very I mean, it would be very fascinating to watch for a period of time, but I never felt that great after. So I was started to notice that. I was like, "Huh, maybe I don't need to invest anymore in that." So I love that perspective.
Exactly.
Crystal, thank you so much for coming on the show. I just love it. And let everyone know where they can follow you to see what work you're doing.
Absolutely. I am on Instagram at crystalware_get clear. I am on LinkedIn. And you can find me with my name, Crystal Ware, Ware. Um, I just launched a website, crystalwaremedia.com, and my podcast, which is really intended for people that want to grow, that want to learn, that want to better themselves and achieve their goals, and how to pivot in career and all these different things we have guests on is the Get Clear with Crystal Ware podcast.
I love it. Thank you for coming on, friend.
Thank you so much. Thanks for everybody listening. And it's been so much fun talking to you today.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me today on the More of What Matters podcast. I hope you're taking away some really powerful insights from this episode. I'd love to hear how you're going to apply the inspiration you received today to your own life. Feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm at alwaysa, and follow the show, More of What Matters podcast, to let me know what's leaving you lit up so I can cheer you on. If you haven't done so already, could you take a moment to subscribe to this show and leave a rating or review? You have no idea how much every single action helps this podcast grow and thrive. Thank you so much for being here. And remember, there's never a better time than now to pursue more of what matters.